In this video, we're going to talk about the use of sources. Use of sources refers to how we include other people's work in our essays. The goal is twofold. We want to make sure we give people credit for their ideas and their stuff, and we want to allow our readers to find our sources when they're doing their own research so that then they can dig even further and have more to talk about. There are two main parts to the use of sources. There's integration and there's incorporation. We're going to start with the second one first. So in terms of incorporation, you're looking at whether or not this is a good source for this essay. These are logical considerations. And was this source used at the best possible place in the essay? As an example, I at one point had a student who was writing about child abuse. She was talking about child abuse in Fresno County and current child abuse. And then about halfway through the essay, she used some statistics from Belfast, Ireland in the 80s. You can probably see how this source was not a good choice for the essay that she was writing. Her entire focus was local. Belfast is in Ireland. Her focus had been close to current day, and the statistics were from the 80s. This was not a good choice for this essay. I can tell you why she chose to include it. She said she needed another source to meet the requirements and she ran out of time. This, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, is another reason why you should start doing your research as soon as you are given an essay assignment, so that you don't end up getting stuck dragging in bad sources. Okay, so that's incorporation of sources. Let's go back up and talk about integration of sources now. Integration of sources has three main parts: signal phrases, in-text citations, and your works cited page. So let's talk about signal phrases first. A signal phrase, an example would be something like, according to Dr. Elizabeth Powell, professor of English at Fresno State, quote, commas are a good thing to use, end quote. That according to stuff at the beginning, where you give my name and you give why I'm believable on this subject, English professor is believable about comma usage, that is part of the signal phrase. You can see the first time you use a source, you use the full name and a credibility statement. So giving the information about me being an English teacher is why I'm a good source on commas. That's the credibility statement. You're going to do this the first time you use every source. Subsequent uses of source, last name only. So even though, say you referred to me as Dr. Elizabeth Powell up here, after that it's going to be Powell only. That's signal phrases. In terms of in-text citations, that's the bit at the end of the sentence, the stuff in parentheses. Generally speaking, that's going to be last name of the writer and page or paragraph number. If you've got a page number, you just have the author's name and the number. If you have a paragraph number, you're going to include PARA to show that that's a paragraph number. How do you know what kind of integration you should be using in a particular situation? You can ask yourself, is it a direct quote? Are you quoting something from the original source? If you are, then you must always include a signal phrase, an according to or a he said, she said, and you must always include an in-text citation. Are you paraphrasing the original source? So you're saying you got your information there, but it's not a direct quote? You're still going to include an in-text citation. Even if you're putting it in your own words, it's their thoughts, their ideas, so you're going to give them credit with an in-text citation, the parentheses at the end. Do you need a signal phrase and according to so-and-so? That's going to depend on if the information is unusual or controversial. So, for example, if you're going to talk about Martha Washington being the wife of George, the first president of the United States, you could find that in 1,000 history textbooks in the U.S. Most people know it. It's not that unusual. If you're going to tell me that Martha Washington was a vampire hunter. If you're going to have something like that in your essay, you want to blame it on whoever the author was. Similarly with statistics, if you have normal, general kinds of statistics, you don't have to have a signal phrase, but you do have to have an in-text citation. All right, third part of integration of sources is the works cited format. You've dealt with this before, you've looked at it before. In terms of a works cited page, you probably know that you're going to have them listed alphabetically by author's last name. You probably know that you're going to have what's called a hanging indent. So that's these kind of backwards looking paragraphs. That's called hanging indent. It's hanging because the first line is at the margin and the rest is indented, as opposed to normal paragraphs where the first line is indented and the rest is at the margin. We do this because it makes it easier to scan down and find the source you're looking for on the works cited page. Go over quickly. You have author, you have article title, you have the name of the website, then you have your web address, and then you have the date that you went there. You put the word accessed and when you saw it. You can see that same information here. Author, article title, name of the website, full web address, and the date that you went there. That's the basics of a works cited page. Granted, those are both internet sources, but we'll leave that for now. Let's jump back and look at some examples of signal phrases. Here you can see this person is writing on The Incredibles 2. They've got two sources that show up in here. One is Tasha Robinson, one is Matthew Rosa. So we have full names the first time we use them. That's good. We're supposed to have full name and a credibility statement. Do we have a credibility statement? For Tasha, they say, as Tasha Robinson of The Verge put it. Okay, that's just saying she wrote something for that website. Is that good credibility? Down here, student went with the same pattern. Author's name of this website. So we're hanging their credibility on the website that they're writing for. How do we find out something about them? If you look at the title page, for example, if you look at the title page for the Robinson article, and we click on her name, Tasha Robinson, that will take us to the biography of Tasha Robinson. That biography tells us that she's a former Verge film TV editor, former senior editor at the AV Club and the Dissolve, general pop culture writer, podcaster, freelancer at NPR and other sites. What do we have here? If we're not familiar with these websites or these podcasts, they're not general information, so they don't really lend her some general credibility. To establish her credibility, I would probably just call her a freelancer or refer to NPR, which is National Public Radio. That's going to have strong... Similarly with Salon.com, it is not a respected news site. So if we go to the Matthew Rosa article, we click on his name, it takes us to a biography about him. It says he's a staff writer for Salon. That doesn't really give him a lot of credibility. It's kind of like saying you're a staff writer for Wikipedia. It doesn't sound really great. He has a master's degree in history from Rutgers University. ABD means he's got everything but his dissertation in history. Those things that he has degrees in history, we could use that. We don't have to specify where from. He has degrees in history. Use that as his credibility. That is probably a stronger credibility statement than to say he works for Salon.com, which is not a highly respected site. Once we've got our credibility statements in line, we have to look at our in-text citations. We've got lots of them here, which is good. This one, Robinson, paragraph 5, comes right after this full quote. So this information presumably comes directly from that article. Where in the article? It comes from paragraph 5. That's what that looks like. That means if we look at the article, we start at the top, we scroll down, the 5th paragraph is where they got that information. Notice this next sentence, there are no quotation marks, but there's still an in-text citation. That means our writer here took this information from the article, put it into her own words, but is still citing the author. That's good. Similarly, with the Matthew Rosa article, she's got paragraph 6. So she's doing well with that. Credibility statement's not quite so great, but the in-text citation's good. And then signal phrase, second use, last name only. She's got that down with both of them. So that's in-text citations, credibility statements, really quick overview of how to use sources in your essay. We will come back to individual subjects here, or you can always read more about it in the writer's reference. If you have questions, email me.